So the people have to take action conducive to the evacuation. Then you have to start the evacuation. Again, this is also non-trivial. I agree with the prior speakers. I mean, for me, detection is clearly a process, of which what comes from the alarm, or what comes, these are all inputs to a process. And these are all, just like ignition is a process. These are very highly dynamic processes. So it's very, very important to understand that when you're starting an evacuation, you're actually giving an order. All right? And therefore you have to have the vectors and the things that go with it. The choice of which group or individuals to start is often a key command decision. This is what people call phased evacuation. All right? I'll be honest, I'm long-standing on the phased evacuation of fantasy invented to comply with codes that has no reality. It is simply a complete guesswork fantasy created so people can say they comply with codes. All right? Phased evacuation in a modern environment that depends on people not knowing that there's a fire somewhere else in the building, therefore not using the stairway, in an environment of iPads, instant communication, Facebook, and so forth, it's just garbage. If you lock the doors and don't let them out, that's different, but I don't know anybody who does that. But you get a certificate of approval of phased evacuation, and who knows what the heck happens in the building. All right, pistols. Remember, no pistols and no phased evacuation. Now, for example, the vehicles closest to the logging road are started up the road. In other words, the start command can also occur every time you change the evacuation plan. All right, in other words, now you're doing a restart. Halt. That's what a valve does. It halts the flow. All right, if you have a dynamic command and control situation, you have to be able to take a flow and stop it. That is a non-trivial exercise with a mob of people. Okay, unless you have fantastically, not over-designed, but creating vast amounts of spare capacity, the need to be able to stop evacuation flows is absolutely critical. For example, in the case of our fire, additional flow down the easterly way has to be stopped. You have to turn there and get them to go in the other direction. Divert. Now, this is a little different from halting. This is actually changing the direction of an evacuation. This is actually, in many cases, in reality, easier than some of the others. You know, it's about as easy as turning a battleship, which you can do if you have a battleship and it's in the water, if you have enough time. The technical difficulty of diverting an evacuation path varies enormously with the specific environment, and the evacuees are diverted to the logging road. In mass evacuations of city, diversion is one of the first implemented functions. In other words, that's actually one we don't know. But in fire, we don't think about it. There's almost no diversion used in sewer systems, so there aren't in fire exits either. Reverse. If there's anything harder than halting an evacuation flow, it's reversing an evacuation flow. In other words, I mean, it's hard to reverse armies under military discipline. It's hard to reverse almost anything. But there are times, what do you do when your exit way is no longer protected? And you have to evacuate the exit way backwards. All right? This is what happened in Mont Blanc. Reversing people's flow in cars is essentially impossible in a tunnel. All right? The evacuate, and there's no alternative. The inhabitants of cars at the dead end must be removed from the cars and sent in the opposite direction. In our example of the case study. Speed. Sometimes you have to control the speed and move it up and down. You have to filter it. Filtering allows some people but not others to pass a given point. For example, no RVs, no horse trailers, or as in the case of Titanic, they didn't allow men into the lifeboats. Unless they were lucky or owned a situation like Bruce's name. So. Conditioning is adjusting the evacuees during the flow, for example, requiring cars to fill empty seats with pedestrians. We talk about literature for preparation conditioning because we needed a system where you take an evacuation unit and in civil engineering, people evacuate cars. So that's a unit and you condition it by putting, you're now assembling the passengers in. But But in fact, this is also in elevators. Filling elevators with people is a form of conditioning, if you're using elevators for evacuation. Removing obstacles. You have to know, can you remove it? For example, it's amazing, I've seen so many civil engineering evacuations have no provision at all for throwing cars off a bridge. In other words, they're evacuating people like at Hurricane Katrina, cars would break down on the bridge, and they'd made no provision at all to remove the obstacles. It was never modeled. This is the baggage how do you get rid of the obstacles? What provisions do you have? And you have to deal with non-cooperators. Loading the vehicles of any kind. Those are all the technical issues. The legal issues in command and control are very straightforward. The ones that we always get to is who has the power? Who has what we call in the common law environment the police power? Who is in charge? Most controlled environments, we pretty much know who's in charge, but in Deepwater Horizon, the Coast Guard has pinpointed the failure to know who was actually in charge in the pre-explosion fire hazard stage as being the primary cause of the disaster. Was the ship's crew or the drilling crew in charge? Who had changed command? Evacuation involves multiple political jurisdictions, multiple sectors. The command and control systems can buckle under the pressure. I've been called into emergencies where there were fights in the streets between the police and fire departments as to who was in charge at a particular emergency. Very interesting. All right. Now, the failure to plan and execute evacuations can result in deadly consequences. You go to Pompeii, you can see the dead bodies still in plaster. Modern engineering current social policy can create greater and greater need for emergency evacuation. Evacuation tools must be created which match the engineering hazards. The failure to plan and execute evacuation can result in deadly consequences. Okay? This is the critical thing. So while evacuation modeling has become increasingly sophisticated, implicit relies on the functioning of command and control systems without examining the functioning of systems in the rare but real emergencies that can follow. It's guesswork. Similarly, building evacuations will rely on chains of assumptions by human behavior that have very, very limited analytical support. And the design of many large and complex buildings often assumes some effective form of command and control. These assumptions should be made explicit along with resources and legal structures needed for making them effective. Okay, I put this slide in so I know when to stop talking. Okay. Different opinion? Lawsuits? I got no problem.
Actually, I was going to ask about lawsuits. If you had a phased evacuation procedure and there was serious fire and people followed the phased procedure, so a portion of the building stayed behind and everyone acted exactly according to the procedure, but people died as a result. Everyone who evacuated was safe and people that remained in accordance to the procedure, the design procedure. Who's responsible? Who's subject to legal action?
Okay, this depends obviously on legal systems, countries, and whatnot. But generally, everybody claims the Titanic defense, or the same as at Cap Hood. We're freaking idiots. We don't know anything. We just complied with all government regulations. The government approved it, so even though we're dumber than dirt, we're not responsible. That was the engineering defense at Cap Hood, where they killed 155 people. Is that we're engineers, we're simply so stupid. We just comply with the law, we're just dumb, that's our defense. That was the formal defense in the court proceedings at Cap Hood. It was also the defense in the Titanic case. They lost actually on the Titanic, they did lose.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But they lost in Ireland, the case was heard in Ireland, so it might have been good. So this varies by nationality, whether you can get away with the I'm an idiot, I relied on idiot government. I'm still waiting for an investigation of the TVCC fire to really explain what happened in China. Talk about brilliant performance-based designs. But they complied with all government regulations. They'll tell you that at every conference meeting. The building they incinerated complied with all government regulations. So that is the problem. That is the problem. But if we want to make it safe, then we have to not believe our own nonsense. All right? And when it's guesswork, it's guesswork. And the other thing I can say is I'm a quiet, shy academic lawyer. You know, I'm not like those mean, nasty trial lawyers out there, you know, rip you apart.
course not.
All right.
Thank you, Adding to the speaker.
Okay.